Ms. Snare, we'll turn the meeting over to you.
Okay. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Complaint Review Committee meeting. I'm going to be the chair today. Ms. Genevong, or are you going to do roll call?
Yes, I will.
Okay. Can I ask a favor? Can we give our recusals at the time of roll call today?
Ms. Galvin, Mr. Hargraves.
Yes, that's fine.
Okay, Ms. Snare.
I'm present and I have a recusal on 4N. It's item 23-0402. It involves my employer and it's been submitted.
Mr. Nassif.
Here, and I just have a disclosure for two cases. First one, item or complaint number 23-0414. The other one, 23-0534. I'd like to state on the record that I have had past professional brief interaction with one of the persons involved, but that interaction does not impact my ability to consider the matter with an open mind.
Mr. Thorwald.
Present.
And Mr. Dang.
Present, and I do not have any conflict of interest.
Mr. Thorwald, any recusals?
No refusal.
Thank you.
Ms. Canavan, I'm having a hard time hearing Mr. Thorwald.
Is that better?
A little bit. Am I the only one?
Yeah, mine too.
Just sounds far away, a little muffled.
Is that any better?
I can hear you. It's just quiet.
How about that?
Oh, that's better. Thank you. Okay. All right, we're going to start with 4A, item 23-0414. The complainant stated that her husband, the patient, was dispensed an incorrect medication by the pharmacy. Anyone have any comments to start off the discussion?
I read this case, and I think, in my opinion, I think we should have the pharmacist take 3 hours of CE on medication errors. That's my thought.
I agree. Do you want to form that in a complete motion?
Sure, I make a motion to have the pharmacist complete 3 hours of a CE in addition to what's required.
Is that non-disciplinary?
That will be non-disciplinary.
I second.
Okay, I have a first and a second. Ms. Galvin, do you need any other clarification before we move on?
I do not.
Okay. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, thank you. Next item is 4B, item 23-0374. The complainant stated that his daughter was dispensed an incorrect medication by the pharmacy.
Yeah, that's, again, this is a very, in my opinion, it's a somewhat serious medication error because the child is only 11 months old. And so similar to the previous motion, I would make a motion to have the pharmacist complete 3 hours of CE, non-disciplinary, in addition to what's expected on the annual basis.
I agree with you, but I would include the technician as well.
Sure, I'm fine with that.
I second.
Okay, let's make it an official motion. Mr. Dang, would you state the motion?
So the motion is to have the pharmacist complete 3 hours of CE in addition to the annual requirement, non-disciplinary, and 3 hours of non-disciplinary CE for the technician.
And medication errors?
And medication errors, yes.
I second.
All right, all those in favor? Aye.
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 Opposed? thank you. 4C, item 23-0174. The complainant stated that she was shorted tablets on her prescription.
I'm leaning towards dismissing this one.
Okay,
It's
tell me your thoughts.
It's a non-control. It's a non-control medication, and 315 tablets dispensing. That is a very odd numbers, because typically we're used to seeing 30 tablets or 90-day supply or 30-day supply. Not sure why patient has to receive 315 tablets. That's a very odd number. But that's my thought.
I understand your reasoning. I still think it's considered a medication error. It's misbranded, or it's still an error because the patient didn't get the correct amount. I agree that, but levothyroxine can be dosed all over the place. So, but yeah, we do typically see 30, 60, 90, but I was thinking 3 hours CE, non-disciplinary CE. Any other thoughts?
I just think that there's no harm done to the patient. It's more of inconvenience. So patient had to come back to the pharmacy for the remainder. It's not like the patient went on without medications. Patient was given 90-day supply, and patient just had to make another trip back to the pharmacy for the remainder. So in this case, continuing education for, in my opinion, is a little bit harsh for the pharmacist.
I agree with that. I mean, I'm fine with dismiss or with the letter of concern to both. But I believe like CE is a little bit harsh for this type of error.
I agree with, go ahead.
Oh,
I agree with Kevin and Tariq.
okay, so two things have been proposed. So I'm not sure what you're agreeing to. Are we agreeing to a letter of concern, or are we agreeing to dismissal?
I make a motion to dismiss.
I second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Nay. Okay. All right, thank you. All right, we'll go ahead and do 4D. That's 23-0349. Patient received a misbranded prescription, and the pharmacist failed to notify the prescriber of the C2 prescription dispensed for less than the prescribed quantity. So I have a couple questions about this one, and possibly Mr. Hyber can answer, really, maybe all of you can answer. I've never worked in a pharmacy that allowed a C2 to have a refill. The software never allowed that at any pharmacy I've worked at. I don't know if any of you can comment on that.
I can provide some insight into that because I had that very same question when I had a copy of the label that indicated 2 refills were placed on it. And apparently, what I was told by one of the individuals in the pharmacy was that their system does that and they're supposed to override it, which seems kind of silly because you would think that, you know, human nature being what it is, they would miss that probably more than now and again, and then you'd think we'd have more complaints.
Mm-hmm.
So not really sure how the system did, but it did allow it. In this case, as you know, the laws have recently been changed where there can be partial dispensings on a Schedule II if the patient or the practitioner who issued the prescription requests it. That was not the case in this case. It was a quantity reduction due to an insurance payment, minimum. And the prescription was misbranded with 2 refills. When the patient returned to pick up the refill that the label indicated they could receive, they were refused the refill. So, that's basically it. And of course, the physician was not notified of the partial fill, which is a requirement when there's a partial fill that the physician or the patient didn't ask for.
Yeah, I see that as an issue with their software. I'm concerned about that software as well as the non-notification to the prescriber. I'll just start off the discussion and say that my thought is that there be a letter of concern for the pharmacist technician and for the permit holder. The pharmacist, actually, maybe I'll go back on that, but mostly I think the pharmacist for not notifying the prescriber about the change in quantity, the permit holder for their system allowing a refill on a C2. I don't know how I feel about the technician, and I don't think no action should be taken on the PIC, in my opinion. Any other thoughts, Mr. Nussi?
I agree with the permit holder for sure because of the software issue there. I'm just a little bit torn about the pharmacist, since the system allow that happening.
Well, there's a federal requirement that they notify the prescriber. So that's what the letter of concern for the pharmacist would be.
I agree with that.
But then, in my opinion, if the system allows that, then me as a pharmacist who's working for this organization, I would not feel obligated to inform the physician that I'm changing the quantity from 90 to 30. Makes sense? Because if the system allows that.
No, the system that I'm concerned about is they're allowing a refill on a C2.
Yes.
But what the pharmacist's obligation was to notify the prescriber that the quantity was reduced.
May I make a suggestion?
Yes.
It's possible their system has been modified to allow for alignment with that new federal requirement, and that it was user error. I'd recommend a conference and bring in their people to maybe explain their system and how it works. Because it's either going to be their system was modified to comply with the current federal law, and we have a training issue where they let it put a refill on it, which was inappropriate, and then you've got the issue you've already addressed with the letter of concern for the pharmacist that let it go out without a notification to the practitioner.
I like that idea. So I can make a motion for a conference for this one.
Second.
Can I make one note? I don't disagree. I just don't think that the PIC or the technician will be part of this conference. So I want to take no action on them. Well, actually, I'm not sure about the PIC, but the technician, it wasn't their responsibility to contact the prescriber. And if that's what our concern is, then I don't think they'd be part of this.
Agree.
May I suggest that you notice the tech just in the event that something comes up during the discussion that somehow the tech could be involved?
Okay.
And then we don't have to postpone and renotice.
Sure. Okay. All right. Okay, Mr. Dang, go ahead and restate your motion, please.
Okay. The motion is to have a conference, all parties involved, the PIC, pharmacist involved, and the technician. So 3 individuals.
And the permit holder.
And the permit holder.
Yeah. Okay.
And I second it.
Thank you, Mr. Thorwald. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Thank you. 4E, which is item 23-0528. The complainant stated that the pharmacy dispensed an incorrect medication for her cat.
But this one, I'm leaning towards 3 hours of CE for the pharmacist, but the technician went ahead and substituted the medication without discussing with the pharmacist. So the technician should also be held accountable for this error. Therefore, 3 hours of CE for the technician as well, and both are non-disciplinary.
I agree. I wouldn't state it that way that they substituted it, but they did pick the wrong product. So overall, yes, I agree with you.
Well, actually, it was the substitution. So she deliberately changed the medication from prednisolone to prednisone. So it says that she could not find the medication, so she changed it to prednisone, from prednisolone to prednisone. And
Okay.
so to me, I think, in my
I think we're at
opinion,
the same point anyway. So
yeah. So in my opinion, the technician went ahead and make the pharmacist make the decision on her own without discussing with the pharmacist.
I will say that I could say this for practically everyone that we're seeing today. I would love to see that there was process improvement done. We have several that are look-alike and sound-alike errors, and I don't see that any process improvement was done. At least it wasn't noted in their response. Not just this one, but several of the complaints today. So just a little side note, I'd love to see that, this medication was, there's an IT improvement or that was moved on the shelf or something that was helpful in the future. But Mr. Dang, did you have a motion that you wanted to?
Yes. So my motion was to
Started.
have the pharmacist complete 3 hours of CE and the technician 3 hours of CE. Both are non-disciplinary.
And that's medication errors?
Med errors, yes, sir.
I believe the pharmacist said they did a CE in vet care. So if that is already completed, would we accept that?
Well, in my opinion, this is non-disciplinary, so more education, it wouldn't hurt. That's just my thought, because it's non-disciplinary.
And the error wasn't for like vet dosing or something. It's like a medication error. It's more than what the technician did.
So you don't want to accept what they've already done. You would like it to be specifically in medication error.
Med errors, yes.
Okay. Okay, so we have a motion. Did we have a second?
I second.
Okay, thank you. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay. 4F is item 23-0416. A patient's prescription was bagged with another patient's medication and sold to the wrong patient.
So
So I read this case. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Correct. No, I read this case and I myself get confused too, because the pharmacist himself did not even could not even understand the cause of it. So, I mean, he doesn't know why the drugs were bagged incorrectly. So, I don't
Well,
know.
but they're the only person in the system that they were able to track down that was involved in the error. So it seems that they're the name that was associated with it. So I would recommend 3 hours of non-disciplinary CE
Yep.
in med error prevention to the pharmacist.
Yep.
With our standard terms. I'll make that my motion.
I have a comment here on. So I'm still trying to understand how it's sold. Like in one bag, I believe it was in one bag, and the technician who sold the prescription did not open the bag, obviously, to catch the error before it happened. So also I have a concern about the process. Like, I mean, this is a very common error.
Mhm.
And so,
I think I can step in and help assist with the question.
yeah.
Very good question. the way this particular company processes their finished orders, the pharmacist who does the final check is the one responsible for placing it into a bag and sealing that bag. The bag is then placed over in the will call bins, and then they remain there until the customer comes and asks to pick it up. The bags are not reopened at any point unless there's a mandatory counsel, and the pharmacist who's called over that performs the counsel elects to open the bag. In this situation, we did identify, to answer Kevin's question, we did identify the fillers on both of these prescriptions, because that is a common point where errors can be made, and they were filled by two different techs. And we know which techs they were, and they were filled at two different times. So the likelihood of them being mixed at that point, since they were filled by two people, is unlikely. And the overlapping point of both of them is they both were bagged by the same individual. And the patient that received the wrong medication also received the correct medication issued for that patient in that same bag. So we know it was an error that occurred probably most likely at the bagging step and not at the fulfillment step.
Thank you. Sorry, so I believe we had a motion, right?
It did have a motion.
Yeah.
Do I
So
have?
I second the motion.
Okay, thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Okay, 4G, item 23-0497. A licensee violated a board order and failed to report a change in the licensee's contact information. So it looks like we're having trouble with communications overall. I would suggest a subpoena for a conference.
Agree.
That'll be my motion.
Second.
Okay. Any other discussion before we vote? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? 4H, item 23-0434. A complaint was opened by the board when a pharmacy technician was found to be working with an expired license.
Wow.
For 180 days. I can make a motion on that. For the technician, a fine of $300 or civil penalty. For the PIC, 3 hours of non-disciplinary law CE. For the permit holder, a fine of $1,500.
I second.
Okay, so how did you come up with the $1,500, Kristen?
It's all off our grid. Did you see any difference there?
So 1,500, that's for 2 incidents, 2 staff working with expired licenses.
You're gonna make me go back? No, I'm just kidding. Let me double check my.
I can help you with
you're
that.
working?
There's only one pharmacy technician that had been working without a license.
Right. I'm not questioning that. On our grid, under working without a valid license, it says pharmacy technician working without a valid license, permit holder $50 per day, not to exceed $1,500 to be paid within 30 days.
I'm fine with that.
All right. So we have a motion.
I second.
You seconded, Mr. Dang?
Yes.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. 4I, let me get back on track here. Item 23-0492. The pharmacy allegedly processed the incorrect quantity of the medication for a 90-day supply. It seems to me there's a resolution, and the resolution seems appropriate to me. There's a little confusion about a partial quantity being transferred in and how the prescription was written. So it seems to me that they're handling it at the pharmacy appropriately. I would be in favor of dismissing.
Agree.
Agree.
I'll make that my motion, dismiss.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? 4J, item 23-0534. A store manager was observed performing an activity requiring a pharmacy technician license. Any thoughts here?
I'm just, I don't think she was the store manager. I don't think she was filling prescription, right? She just was counting.
Counting meds.
Just counting.
Just
So
to see how it worked.
yeah, and I mean, I'm in favor of like dismiss. That's what I'm looking at it. I don't.
Mhm.
I think it's concerning that someone comes into the pharmacy and is doing something that is pharmacy related without a license. So I was leaning towards a letter of concern to the permit holder.
I'm okay with that. Yeah.
I have a question here.
Okay.
We've previously given more stringent responses to people that have gone in the pharmacy without a pharmacy license. How do we I'm looking for the words. Allow somebody to go in the pharmacy who is not a pharmacist with such a mild response compared to others we've had a problem with.
I have the same thought too, sir. So in the past, we have imposed heavier fines or penalties for those pharmacies that allow non-pharmacists to enter the pharmacy. In this case, to me, a store manager is just like someone who doesn't have the pharmacist license nor pharmacy technician license. So this person not only accessed the pharmacy, but he performed the functions as a pharmacy technician. So to me, letter of concern is too light of a punishment for this particular case.
I would have one other concern in that as well, since the manager also has authority over the whole store. There seems like an issue there of responsibility, and how does the store manager have influence over the pharmacist? It's not. I find that as an issue.
Mm-hmm.
I agree with this concern, but allowing non-pharmacy staff to enter, to my knowledge, as long as there is a pharmacist there, because we have a clerk work in the pharmacy and they're not licensed, they're not a technician. And sometimes when a supplier sends a driver to a pharmacy, sometimes they enter the pharmacy to drop the shipment, they're not licensed as well. So I believe this is not a concern, allowing that person to enter the pharmacy as long as there is a pharmacist there. But I agree with the concern about, like the authority, and then when they come, like trying to act like a technician.
Mm-hmm.
So, but I believe the message we need to send, just this is not okay. I believe so. So I agree with Mrs. Snare about the letter of concern to the permit holder.
Well, to your point, a pharmacy clerk can work behind the counter, but that person's responsibility is solely ringing up patients. That person does nothing but just ringing up prescriptions at the cash register. In this case, this person was physically involved in counting medications, touching medications, and that clearly is a technician duty.
Correct.
So
But they're
and where
not
he
filling prescription. I mean, they're not like filling prescription. They're not like, for example, when we have company to do like return expired medication. So there's return company will send someone to a pharmacy and they might count pills there. You know, like they're not doing a technician job. And I believe that person, she wasn't helping the workflow. That's my understanding. I could be wrong. But she wasn't helping the staff. You know, she just tried something, and I believe the message with little concern is appropriate.
Yeah.
The other side of that, in my view, is they're not even supposed to be in the pharmacy. And we have given stronger penalties to people that have done that in the past, whether they're trying to act in that capacity or not.
Mhm.
Does anybody have a different thought on
So
what we should do, or should we take this to the full board?
my motion is to have, because the person that we should penalize here would be the pharmacist on duty. Because if I'm the pharmacist working, if I see someone who doesn't have a license
They're not
and
named.
touching medications and act like a technician, I would stop that person right away. But in this case, this pharmacist allowed that to happen. So therefore, and clearly that pharmacist had violated the pharmacy laws. So I would suggest that we would impose 3 hours of CE law, CE disciplinary, not non-disciplinary, 3 hours of law,
Mr.
CE.
Dane,
The
the
problem-
pharmacist
the
is not
problem-
named.
Yeah,
He's
the
not named.
only the pharmacy, the permit's been named. If you want to expand it out toward the pharmacist, you would have to have the complaint either expanded to include the pharmacist, open a new one against the pharmacist, and have them respond to the complaint or allegations, and then it would probably come back to the committee at a future meeting.
So then that would be the route I'm leaning towards.
I want to make the suggestion that we take this to the full board. That way we can all discuss it further and get more heads. If that's okay, I'll make that my motion that we save this to be discussed at the full board.
Wise
meeting.
decision.
I second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, thank you. And we'll go to 4K. That's item 23-0533. A shipped medication was received without protection from excessive temperature and leaked out of the container during delivery to the patient. I'll tell you my thought on this. I'd like to hear more from the company, from the pharmacy. So I would recommend a conference.
Mm-hmm. Agreed.
Okay, I'll make that my motion for a conference.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay. Item 4L, that's, or excuse me, 4L, item 23-0482. The complainant received someone else's medication in the prescription bag.
I think we should do what we did earlier on this.
A conference?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I had some questions for the pharmacy too, so, okay. You want to make that your,
I make it my motion.
thank you. Do you have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, 4M, item 23-0496. A prescription written for estriol testosterone was dispensed incorrectly as estradiol testosterone. it's unfortunately hard even for me to pronounce the difference between the two. So look-alike, sound-alike. The pharmacist was involved in all aspects of typing and verifying this. So I would recommend 3 hours non-disciplinary CE for the pharmacist in med error prevention with our standard terms.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any
Aye.
opposed? Okay. 4N, I'm recused, so I will have Mr. Nassif chair. Thank you.
Thank you. So we have item number 4N, complaint 23-0402. A pharmacy dispensed the maintenance dose prescription rather than the lower starting dose prescription to a patient. Any thought about this? Just like when I read, I kind of started when I looked into the details. So the pharmacist did not get any alert for like a duplicate or to dispense the lower dose. And when patient's spouse called pharmacy, spoke with the customer service, and they got agreement for the dose, and then the pharmacist just verified it. So to me, a letter of concern, because I believe the system has an issue there. Any thoughts? I'm thinking letter of concern to the permit holder.
I'm okay with that.
So I can make it my motion?
Second.
Thank you.
I'm sorry to interrupt. This is Jean Galvin. So a letter of concern to the permit holder only?
Correct. I mean, there is a pharmacist involved there. I don't know if, to me, the concern is coming from the permit holder, because the system is not really helping to avoid this kind of errors.
May I have a few words?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, just so everyone knows that our rules do not require a system to do anything. Okay, it's there as a tool to support the pharmacist, but the law is written in such a way that the pharmacist is responsible for performing the drug utilization review. So if the computer doesn't present it because the architecture of the system, the software, so to speak, is not built to detect it, or the settings are too low where it doesn't trigger an alert, or the prescriptions, like in this case, were placed on hold. So we don't know if their systems architecture includes prescriptions that are sitting on the side on hold. They've been entered, but they haven't been filled. That may not be included in the matrix of doing a DUR check. But ultimately, the pharmacist would be responsible for reviewing the profile and performing the DUR.
Correct. I agree. But sometimes I'm just like thinking out loud there. Sometimes the pharmacist doesn't know if the patient had samples from the lower dose. So I believe they should have verified with the patient. I agree with that. But in this case, there is no like person-to-person interaction. There is no pharmacist-patient interaction, right? And so I can modify my motion to like a letter of concern to both, to a permit holder and to the pharmacist involved, for both of them.
This is Jean Galvin again, along the lines of what Steve says. I don't think we can mandate that a permit holder have a certain type of software that alerts a pharmacist to every potential issue. We can't substitute the pharmacist.
Correct. But if that's how they train their staff, we don't know if they train their staff this way, like, because obviously the pharmacist receives kind of alert for a different DUR or different drug interaction, and the pharmacist did the right thing with discontinuing the other med. So the way I see it, like how this permit holder trained their staff, right? So I will also hold them accountable on this, you know, like if that's how they train their staff, so they, you know, like we don't know. So I don't know if if Kevin has any thought on this.
So I'm on the same page with Gene. We can't really force the permit holder or the owner of the pharmacy to have a software that can assist the pharmacist with the DUR process. Obviously, all pharmacists should have the basic knowledge of performing DUR. So in this case, we should leave the permit holder out of the picture and only focus on the pharmacist. In this case, clearly he had failed to perform the routine DUR when he filled the prescriptions. So that's my take on this. In terms of the permit holder, I don't see we have any ground to penalize a permit holder, because it's they have a system in place, but when it comes to DUR, that is the pharmacist's job, not the permit holder's job.
Okay. So I withdraw my first motion.
So your first motion was to have
A letter of concern to permit holder, and then we had second, so I withdraw this motion. Okay, I don't know if you'd like to make a motion.
So since there's only three of us, I don't know if anyone else have another input on this one, but we should the first motion should be failed first before we make a second motion, or you can rescind your first motion.
Yeah, I rescind my first motion.
Okay.
Mr. Thorwald, will you rescind your second?
I rescind my second.
So then my motion for this particular complaint is to impose a 3 hours of CE on medication error for the pharmacist. That's it.
Non-disciplinary?
Non-disciplinary, yes.
I second that, but I'd like to make a side comment here. I think it could be considered in the future for rules to look at software that aids in these things and checks, have some kind of basic standards across the board on them of what they can perform and what they can't, as well as training.
All right, so we have a motion, we have second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Aye. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we're gonna go on to 4O, item 23-0355. A C2 prescription was dispensed for less than the quantity prescribed. neither the patient nor the prescriber requested a partial filling of the prescription. The prescription was labeled as refillable, and the patient obtained one additional refill before being denied a subsequent fill. So I am wondering if Mr. Hyber could give us more context of where it was decided this 7-day supply was all that was allowed. Do you have any more context to that?
I can provide that. The responses that we received indicated that it was based upon insurance. So, and that wasn't the issue. I mean, obviously, if they feel that 7 days supply is all that they feel the patient should get, I mean, this current state law doesn't force them to dispense the full quantity. But that wasn't the case. They reduced it according to their response, insurance driven. And I know this particular firm has software deployed that allows compliance with the partial filling of a Schedule II. However, as we talked about in that earlier case, either the patient has to request that partial fill or the prescriber.
Well, it says state law in the summary. It says the reduction was due to state law restricting dispensing to more than 7 days, no more than 7 days.
Well, that's the other side of the issue. Okay, they put the refill on it that they shouldn't have because they didn't follow federal law in that regard. But then when they partially filled it, they never notified the prescriber according to the state law that they should have followed for the partial filling of a Schedule II. Or did I misquote?
So when it's Percocet and it's an initial fill and it's not by like a pain medication doctor or something, then I thought it was 5 days. Is that what they're quoting for the 7 days?
No, I didn't misquote. I mean, 21
Oh,
CFR
I mean-
1306-13 indicates if there's a partial filling. In other words, if they're filling it because they can't supply the full quantity, and they couldn't in this case because of insurance, then they're required to notify the practitioner of that partial fill within 72 hours. So that's one issue.
Mhm.
But they went the other way. They basically followed a new federal law that allows a partial fill of a prescription, but they didn't have authority to do that because they didn't meet the requirements of either the prescriber or the patient. So you really have two issues in play, and it's up to you to decide which way you want to go. Do you want to cite them for 21 CFR 1306.13 because they filled it like they should have, but they didn't notify the doctor, or 21 USC 829 F1, which, by the way, we now have a better, more direct rule, but that wasn't in effect until after this event occurred. The law was updated on October 13th of 23, and now we have more clarity around this issue under 21 CFR 1306.13.
Well, as we can see, it's confusing. My thought was I would like to do a letter of concern for the pharmacist for not notifying the prescriber that they changed they partialed the quantity. That's what my thought was on this.
So your motion?
Yeah, that's my motion. A letter of concern to the pharmacist for not notifying the prescriber of the change of quantity or partial fill,
Second.
however you want me to state it. Thank you. Mr. Dang, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Hyber, too. 4P, item 23-0553. Prescription dispense had an incorrect quantity and opened blister cards. I will say that I wouldn't want an opened blister card be prescribed to me either. So this would be a 3 hours of non-disciplinary CE to the intern and to the pharmacist beyond what
Second.
are standard terms. Okay,
Mhm.
I have a second. Any other discussion before we vote?
Aye.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Four.
Mr. Mayor, can we go back a minute to
Sure.
4O?
4-0.
I just realized now, that if you look at the last sentence in the narrative that's on the top of page 2, that the practitioner was notified of the partial fill. The reason I put 21 CFR 1306-13 on there was they did the refill.
Okay.
Okay. So in other
So-
words, it says in there may not be filled, so they did the refill. So really where I was looking at the reason was they didn't follow the federal law and then they also refilled it.
Okay.
Okay. So
I
you
can
can still cite that, but the reason would not be
Yeah. I'll
not
amend
notifying
my
the
motion.
practitioner. That wouldn't be true.
Okay.
So
Thank you. I will go back to, we'll rewind to item 23-0355. I'll amend my motion to be a letter of concern to the pharmacist for the refill of the C2 and not following the federal requirement.
And I amend my second.
Okay. And we'll take another vote. All those in favor? Aye.
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 Any
Do,
opposed?
question, do we have to rescind our previous vote?
Ms. Galvin or Mr.
I
Harper?
think the intention was for this to replace that vote. So, and this is a recommendation to the board. So I think we're okay.
Okay. Thank you. Let's go ahead and take that vote. I think we got in the middle. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any
Aye.
opposed? Okay. All right. Thank you. All right. We are headed back to 4Q, I believe is where we're at. Oh, no, we're on 4P. Did we complete that one? The open blister packet. I recommended 3 hours of non-disciplinary CE. Mr. Dang had seconded,
Yeah.
and I don't know if we'd voted.
My notes indicate you did.
We
Okay.
did.
Okay. We heard it, we didn't?
We
We'll
did.
We did. Okay, sorry. Okay. All right, 4Q. That's item 23-0543. A prescription was filled with the wrong medication. 4Q. It's another look-alike, sound-alike drug.
Mm-hmm. So similar to the previous one that we had voted on, I would recommend 3 hours of CE for the pharmacist as well as the technician.
Second.
Just want to make clear that would be non-disciplinary.
Yes,
Okay, thanks.
And in medication error prevention.
correct.
I modify my second to include those.
Great, thank you. All right, any other discussion before we vote? All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? 4R, item 23-0495. A prescription was filled with wrong medication. Look-alike, sound-alike. Yeah, all of these, I'd love to hear what their process improvement is, not just that they're going to be more alert, which is also great, but I would love to hear what the process improvement was. So I'll make a motion for 3 hours of non-disciplinary CE for the pharmacist and technician involved. That's in med error prevention done in addition to the CE requirements with our standard terms. Do I have a second?
I second.
Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. 4S, item 23-0271. The complainant alleged she received the wrong medication. Okay, I'll make a motion for 3 hours of non-disciplinary CE for the pharmacist and the technician in med error prevention, in addition to the required CEs with our standard terms.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. 4T, item 23-0524. The pharmacy filled a prescription with the incorrect medication. This is a look-alike, sound-alike drug. Oh, no, it's not in this case. Excuse me.
It's not,
Oh, it was placed in the wrong place on the shelf. They looked alike, but they do not sound alike. Sorry, that's correction there. I'll make a motion for 3 hours of non-disciplinary CE in med error prevention that's beyond what's required in other standard terms.
Second.
For the pharmacist?
Yeah, there's only pharmacist. named.
Correct.
And I had a second. Who was that?
Frank Thorwald.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Thorwald. All those in favor?
Aye.
aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. 4U is item 23-0242. The complainant alleged the wrong medication was dispensed for their 2-year-old child. I don't see this as different. It's a look-alike sound alike medication error. I appreciate all the follow through that they did with the patient to make sure that the patient was okay. And I would recommend 3 hours of non-disciplinary CE for the pharmacist.
I second.
And med error prevention beyond
Yeah.
what's required in standard terms. Okay,
I second.
all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? 4B, item 23-0475. The complainant alleged the pharmacy filled a controlled substance prescription more frequently than the provider intended. On this one, it was written 1 QD PRN, and they entered it as 10. Then there was a 30 days written after that. I wouldn't necessarily see that as it had to last 30 days because that's a common e-prescribe kind of stamp that gets put on so many prescriptions. So I was going to make the recommendation to dismiss.
I agree with you.
Second.
That's your motion. That's your motion.
Yeah, I'll make that my motion. A motion to dismiss.
I second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, almost to the finish line. 4W, item 23-0331. A complainant alleged that a pharmacy failed to report controlled substance dispensations to the CSPMP. So I had a couple questions for the permit holder about whether this was isolated event. Is it a known issue, and do they audit, just questions like that. I was kind of leaning toward a conference. Anybody else have any other ideas about this?
I agree with you for conference because I like to hear more from them.
Okay, I'll make that my motion. Conference.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Thank you. Anything we need to go back to clarify? Not hearing anything. Okay, well, thank you all very much, and we'll
Thank
see
you.
you on the 6th.
Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you,
Concludes our
everyone.
meeting.
Have a great day.
Thank you.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.